please join me in welcoming Marshawn Evans Daniels.
Can you hear me? Can you snap with me? Come on, we're in the South. You got to do on beat. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Some of you know it. This little light of mine, I can't hear you. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. All right, so are you allowing your light to shine? That's what we're going to talk about here today, because I believe that purpose is the most powerful force on the planet. We're created on purpose, with purpose, from a place of purpose, for the very purpose of purpose. It's a lot of purpose, right? But I believe purpose is not supposed to be something that's hidden, that people don't see. When our light shines, people see something in them that they can only find out when they see something in you that stands up and rises up into levels that maybe you haven't even experienced yet. But that's what I'm going to challenge you to do here today, is to let your light shine in a brand new way. Now, y'all look a little bit stiff, so I'm going to ask you to do something that I learned in ballet class, okay? So you think you're sitting up straight, but here's what you learn. You kind of hold your shoulders back. Yep. The guys are doing this better than the ladies. This is quite fascinating. Thank you, Dallas. You're going to take your hand over your head, and you're going to do a little pop with it. You're going to pretend that there is a string going straight down through the center of your being. You all, photographers, get this. You all look amazing. And you're going to pull that string up right through the center of your head. Just a little, there. Oh, Chuck, beautiful. And oftentimes we think that we've come to the top of where we can be, but I'm going to ask you to go a little bit higher today. I'm going to ask you to challenge the impossible. So stretch just a little bit higher, and let it down. And I won't ask you to do that again as long as you stay awake with me today, because I'm going to invite you to step into a new version of you, a you that's been waiting to emerge through, because purpose is indeed the most powerful force on the planet. But here's the problem with that. Most people don't know their purpose. And that's not always popular to admit. I don't believe that purpose is supposed to be an ever-seeking, never-finding, impossible to grasp, elusive type of thing. You see, when we look at our lives, we see a mess. When destiny looks at our lives, destiny sees a map. I'm going to share that map with you here today. But make no mistake about it, the key to success or creating anything that you desire in your life or in your business is to become a visionary, a person who is what I call a possibility catalyst, driven by and drenched in this thing called purpose. You see, purpose is that thing that speaks to visionaries. It's the thing that says there's something inside of you and there's something that's waiting to be done. And so therefore the impossible, which is what we're here to accomplish, yes? Oh, 3 people. The impossible is what we're here to accomplish, yes? In order for that to happen, we have to understand that the impossible is really just an invitation, a muscle-building invitation to do something that's never been seen, but that which is waiting to be done. The impossible is an invitation to step into something that's never been experienced. And most people miss it because the pathway to a greater purpose and a greater destiny drives straight through the doorway of pain, difficulty, and disruption. And so I learned this. Not too long ago. What I know for sure is that when we don't know our purpose, is that we settle. We settle for people-pleasing. We settle for protocol. We settle for approval, performance, striving, doing what other people think we need to do, as opposed to creating what's never been done. And the worst thing that we settle for is appropriateness. Predictability is the enemy to possibility. And so I learned this as a little girl. About 11 years old, I grew up here in the suburbs of North Dallas. And I was sitting on the living room floor at my parents' house. My parents are actually here. And a woman was walking down the street. And as a child, I just liked to people watch a little bit. So I'm sitting in the living room. I'm watching this woman who's walking up and down the street. And she looks a little bit frantic. She had a long, long ponytail. And she's just frantically walking. And all of a sudden, she stops dead smack in the front of our house. And I'm staring at her, and she, I don't think, is staring at me, because I understood that I could see out of the windows, but that nobody can see. And I don't know how many of you have ever been in that situation where you're just watching and you feel like nobody sees you, but you see everything else. You feel like you're invincible and invisible, but you can see what's going on. So I'm staring at her, and she's staring at me, and you know you don't lose a staring match with an 11-year-old. And she proceeds to not only look at me through these windows, she walks up the walkway to our house, and she rings the doorbell. And I'm thinking, am I in trouble for staring? My dad yells from the back of the house, I'll get the door. He comes up, and I'm curious, and I'm a daddy's little girl, and I know that if I'm going to get in trouble, nothing's going to go down on his watch in front of him. So I bury my little head underneath his arm as she opens the door, and she proceeds to explain that she needs a babysitter. Now, I knew this was my neighbor, but I didn't know her very well, and I knew she had 2 kids, but I didn't know their family very well. And my dad looks down at me and says, well, baby, do you want to do this? And I look up, and I find myself staring again. And I said, sure. And so I throw on some clothes. We walk across the street to her house, and in the 2 minutes that it takes to get there, she explains how to make sure that her house does not burn down and that her kids don't end up in child protective custody within my care. And then she's gone, and I'll fast forward 2 hours later, or approximately. She returns and asks, how did everything go? And you know, what I really wanted to say is that, you know, you raise Bebe's kids. Some of you know who Bebe's kids are. And that your kids never, ever, ever, ever need to have sugar ever again in their lives, but I was too polite to say that. And instead, I said, everything went fine. And so she says, well, I didn't have an opportunity to stop by the bank. But she pulls out these 2 denominations. In one hand, she has a $1 bill. And in the other hand, she has a 5. She says, I didn't have an opportunity to stop by the bank. I've got a 1 and a 5. This is all I've got. Which would you like? And I find myself staring yet again. Now, can I be honest with you for just a moment? Yes. I really wanted to say both, right? But there was something inside of me that felt guilty, that felt greedy, and that felt out of order, inappropriate for even thinking about wanting both, that maybe I would be doing too much, maybe I would be rude or not polite, maybe that's what a good girl isn't supposed to do. You're not supposed to ask for more, are you? And so as I looked at these 2 bills and wanting to reach for more, actually wanting both, instead of reaching for more, I settled for less. And I said, I'll take the 1. And she said, are you sure? She actually pulled them back and said, are you sure? And I said, yes, ma'am, I'm sure. So she took the 5, put it in her back pocket. I took the 1, took it with me, went back across the street to my house, and I was actually very proud of myself because I earned something that day. It was the first time that I had been hired. I hadn't thought about what my compensation might be. I was 11 years old, but I also learned a very powerful lesson that lives with me to this day, and that is this. If you allow yourself to settle for less, nobody is obligated to stop you. I wanted her to tell me that I had earned more, that I was worthy of both. I wanted her to tell me that I was worthy of what I had already earned and what I wanted, but little did I know she couldn't do that, and it wasn't her responsibility. It's not the world's responsibility. It's not your peers' responsibility. It's not your supervisors. It's nobody's responsibility to tell you what you're worth. That's up to me. But why is it that we're conditioned sometimes? We naturally lean towards the less. It's impossible to step into the incredible unless we learn and we dare to have the audacity to believe bigger. What if we had more $5 bill moments. Look at your neighbor and say, I got 5 on it. Some of you know that reference. I got 5 on it, or do you? Because this is where the future becomes unlocked. You see, I believe that there's these two competing voices that are competing for your purpose, that are competing for your destinies, competing for your innovation. It's competing for the best of you, what's in you, and the thing that we all need. But you can't get it if you're making smaller decisions, living in a smaller dimension as opposed to operating at a higher frequency. And these two competing voices, I call them little me and future me. Now, you know little me. Little me is that obnoxious little roommate in your head. Little me is that voice of fear that says, who do you think you are? You don't need to reach for more. And truth be told, when I think back to that situation at 11 years old, she already knew that I was worthy of both, because she said, I didn't have an opportunity to stop by the bank. Oftentimes, people already know what you're worth. They're just challenging you to step up into it. But little me says, who do you think you are? You're not worth that. It would be wrong to reach for more. It would be wrong to ask for what you desire. It would be wrong to charge what you're really worth. Little me is also that voice that is the voice of fear. It's the voice that says, it's impossible. But the counter voice is future me. And future me is the voice of faith. Future me is the voice that doesn't say it's impossible. Future me is the voice that is constantly telling you to challenge the impossible. Future me is the voice that says, why not you? And especially you. You see, future me sees everything that is in store and knows exactly the purpose for which you were designed. And it's constantly nudging you and say, yes, try that. Do this differently. Let that go. Let's go this way, because if you would drive this way, you'll step into the incredible. But these two voices, they battle, and both of them also know something that I'm here to share with you today, is that you have an incredible, necessary purpose, and your purpose is about something much higher, much greater, much bigger, and much more necessary than success. I'm talking about significance. That every person under the sound of my voice has a life and a voice and superpowers that matter and that are necessary. But little me doesn't want you to know this. Future me and I are conspiring here today, if that's okay, to let you see what your life is supposed to look like. Is it okay if I share that with you? Yes. I'm just a little bit not feeling the truth, if you believe it. Is it okay if I show you what your life is supposed to look like on this day? Yes. Well, I will not leave you hanging anymore. I believe that there are 5 stages of the life journey of what your life is supposed to look like. But make no mistake about it, you will have to dare and have the audacity to believe bigger about who you are, why you are here, and to believe bigger than who you've been, even up into this moment right now. I'm going to challenge you to believe bigger than your obstacles and even bigger than your successes. Because what got you here will not get you to the next level. And so these 5 stages of the purpose journey, I call it the purpose map. Can I just get a round of applause because I'm not using PowerPoint? So 5 stages of the purpose journey. Most people never make it out of stage 2. Look at your neighbor and say, don't let that be you, boo. Stage 1. You're welcome to draw along with me. I talk about these in my new work, Believe Bigger. Stage 1 is called discovery. Discovery is where we ask the question, and at each of these stages, we're going to ask a critical question. Who should I be? Who am I supposed to be? And this is in the formative stages in seasons of life where we're like sponges. It's where people tell us who we should be, what we shouldn't do. This is where we learn the do's and don'ts of life. This is where we're actually conditioned to shrink. We're conditioned to play it safe, to fit in, to not get in trouble. We're conditioned to reach for the 1s as opposed to the 5s because we're conditioned to play it safe, to do what will cause us to be acceptable, what won't cause us to get in trouble. In my case, it was, who do you need to be to not get your name on the board, Marshawn? Now, I don't know about you, back when I was in school, we used to get our name on the board with chalk. I don't know if they still make chalk for schools anymore, but with chalk, and then if you were talking too much, you'd get a check by your name. And then if you were still, Randy is with me, Randy got checks as well. You get 2 checks by your name if you kept talking, and it depended on the teacher. If you got 3, you would go to the principal's office. And I learned that early on that if I used my voice, it could be a problem. If I spoke up when it wasn't the perfect time, I could get in trouble. And the question is, when did you learn that it was inappropriate to use your voice? Because there's so many ways that we get shoulded on in this first stage. We learn it from our family, from our friends, from school, from society, from media, from our religion, from all these different influences. But we're these sponges, and we ask the question, who should I be? And whatever we get and whatever we feel will cause us to be accepted, will cause us to get approval, will cause us to get validation from others, is who we decide to be in terms of our inner identity. And it's also, though, where we learn that maybe there's too much at risk for me to be who I really am and for me to do what I really want to do. This is where we tell someone our dreams and they tell us that we're dreaming too big. Oh, honey, that's not a real career. That's not a real job. Or people like you don't do that. Women don't do that. You've never seen a black person do this or that. This is where we're told who we shouldn't be, and we're taught to think in a way that is safe because other people are projecting onto us the things that they couldn't do and stopping us from having the hurt and disappointment that they had. And so the dreams that we have become traded in for reality. The do's and don'ts of life. In stage 1, in discovery, we ask the question, who should I be? We get shoulded on, and each of us adopts this inner rule book. This is a book, I know you love my drawing, of rules. My rules are different than your rules, and your rules are different than his rules. But each of us has our own rules, and I want to challenge you to think about which rules have been driving your life, navigating what you do and what you don't do. That little feeling, that little me comes up here because little me knows your rules, and little me is constantly beating it into your head. This is not what you're supposed to do. This is not the way that it's supposed to be done. But visionaries tap into the realm of the unseen to do something that's never been done, and they don't play by the rules. They change the rules. They rewrite the rules in alignment with the future that they desire. So in stage 1, we ask the question, who should I be? That takes us into stage 2, where we ask the question, well, the stage 2 is called talent. And we ask the question, who did I decide to be? And usually the answer to that question is based off of who the rules told us we should be. Now, I mentioned that, I used to get my name on the board. I was labeled a problem child in elementary school. I went to a predominantly Caucasian school. My brother and I were 2 of a small handful. There were 5 African-American kids in our entire school. And for me, showing up that first day of first grade, and my brother the first day of kindergarten, I remember all of the students coming in and them automatically saying that we were at the wrong school. We belonged at the school down the street because that's where all the brown kids were. And we, unlike all the other students that day and their parents walking straight through and taking their kids to class, we had to show our ID. We had to prove that we belonged. We had to prove that this is where we were, even though there were certain people who lived on my same street who go straight to class. And so being labeled this problem child, being told that I needed to be in special education, that we had antisocial behavioral disorders. My parents were at the school, literally. They almost should have had a parking spot for them, because they were going to make sure that that messaging didn't stick and stay inside. But some of it did. And so what I learned is that instead of getting my name on the board for talking too much, I would change how people saw me, and I would become an achiever. I'd make excellent grades. I would be someone that they would talk about because of performance. Remember I said earlier, when we don't know our purpose, we settle for approval, people-pleasing, protocol, performance. And it worked really well. It's amazing that people love you when you're successful. They love when you are in the newspaper, on television, when you're competing at Miss America and getting excellent grades and scholarships. I was a Harry S. Truman Scholar. I got over $200,000 in scholarships. I went to Georgetown University Law School, 100% debt-free. People love it when you're succeeding. Doesn't even necessarily mean that your confidence is true. It just may mean that you've learned how to play the games because the rules told you who you needed to be. And what happens is we decide who we become based off of the rules told us we were good enough to become. And so we end up climbing these 5 success mountains. And each of these mountains are not bad. They each represent a different aspect of our lives. One is the parenthood mountain, the mountain of being a mother or a father. The other is marriage. The third is mending. That's our inner fixer, where we like to fix things for other people because it makes us feel helpful and good and useful. Then there's the making a difference mountain. This is our desire to serve and give back. And then the last one is the money mountain of prestige and titles. And each of these, again, none of them are bad. But when any of them become our identity, they become something that we anchor ourselves in. Oftentimes, we're really just being active. And activity, when it's out of alignment with your core identity, always ends up empty. And so this is why we can get to the top of a mountain and feel empty at the end of it. I know that's how I felt when I started my career in law. Coming out of Georgetown, actually I had been on the show The Apprentice. There's a guy who's in the White House. You may have heard of the show. And I was on that show 10 out of the 13 weeks when I got fired. And I did know at that time that he can make mistakes, because this was a big one. When I came off of that show, I had this, what I call a lightning bolt moment. And it was a desire to work with professional athletes in the NFL and the NBA. Now, I had never done that before. I'd never taken any classes in law school dealing with sports. And in fact, when my peers were fighting over the one sports law class that Georgetown offered, I said, well, you don't have to worry about me fighting for it. I'm not trying to go after it. That wasn't my desire. I was planning to be the Attorney General of the United States one day. It wasn't on my career path and plan. And when I was on The Apprentice, it was on 10 out of the 13 weeks, the last episode, I'm finally in a room by myself in New York, and I get this lightning bolt moment to work with athletes, and I have no idea how it's going to happen. And something is important when you get an indication of something that you've never seen before, is not to just ignore it and not just to think, oh, that was a good idea and let it be a fleeting moment. It's important to hold on to it and also to speak life into it. So I did something that I think it's very important for us to do, is to call somebody or tell somebody who you know will be a waterer of this seed of inspiration that's just passed down. And so I called my mama, who's right there. And I told her this, and I said, Mom, I don't know how this is going to happen. And she says, but it will. And now, fast forward, 2 years later, it still hadn't happened, but I was still talking about it. It still was in my cortex. I went and started my career at a major law firm in Atlanta, one of the largest in the country. And as I sat on the 21st floor looking out the window, I could see everybody else living their life, and I felt like I wasn't living mine. I loved the law firm. I thought it was a great firm, but I felt like I was out of place. You see, I was meeting a lot of professional athletes now at this point, and I was trying to introduce them into the firm, but they told me I was too young. This is not what first-year associates are supposed to do. You're not supposed to be getting business, even though that's the way you make partner. You're too young. You're living beneath what we've expected and what we like to see. We like to see things fit into a more regimented, calm way. And so I started also to feel a little bit resented because I had been on this show, The Apprentice. I was doing a lot of national television. I was speaking all around the country, which I had been doing before I even went to law school. And one of my mentors really didn't like it. She sat me down one day. She said, you know, you have the kind of name recognition that many lawyers work their entire careers for. And I thought it was a compliment. But really it was, who do you think you are? Living so large, shining so bright. And so I started losing weight and losing hair, and I didn't have a lot of weight to lose, but I was losing it, and I started to literally get sick and feel like the cases that I was supposed to be representing. I was an employment lawyer. And I had to make a decision between possibility and predictability. Would I make this leap off of this mountain that I wanted for so long? Paid a very nice salary at 26 years old. And one of my other mentors said, if you leave, you're throwing your law career away. Now, true, I didn't know as much as she did. But when I told her that I was going to leave and make the leap to start my own sports agency, I won't use the exact words that she said, but she did say holy something, and she praised poop. And she said, you're going to have to buy your own paper. She said, you're going to have to buy your own paper. And I thought, and? And I realized as I was looking back across at her, I said, that's who I don't want to be. I don't want to be scared of not having predictable resources around me. And with someone who had been practicing law longer than I had been alive, for that level of fear. And she was projecting her little me onto me. But this is where it's important to believe bigger. And so I found myself leaving this mountain of success and prestige and desiring to do something a little bit different. And so I started my own sports agency. And what I want you to take away from these 5 mountains, again, marriage, motherhood, mending, making a difference, being helpful to people around you. None of those things are bad. But we have to be careful of the stories we tell ourselves about who we are when we say the words, I am. Because those titles that we have on our business cards, they can become idols. That's all we think that we are. But who are you when the job ends? When there's a downsizing or a restructuring? Who are you when your largest client pulls out? Who are you when the man leaves or the woman makes another decision? Who are you when your kids start acting up? That doesn't happen to anybody. Who are you without these mountains? You see, it's not just that we're supposed to climb mountains. I believe we're supposed to move the mountains. And so these titles become idols, and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what really makes us becomes a fable. And so I was starting to feel like there's something more, and I felt honestly a little guilty for desiring more because I should want to be where I'm at. So I end up starting this professional sports agency, Edge 3M Sports and Entertainment. I signed the highest paid defensive end in the NFL as my first client. Now, it was necessary because when I made the transition, I had one retainer client. It was a large investment firm that was paying me a retainer to be able to recruit the professional athletes because they wanted to manage the foundation's assets for the athletes. And I'd be starting and running their foundations. And so I remember this was on a Saturday because my last day at work was on a Friday. I was driving a Hummer. I'm a Texas girl. My Hummer in the back of my truck still had all of my materials, and maybe I got a little extra paper and a few pens before I left. There was a lot in the back. And I remember getting this phone call. I was at a barbecue in Atlanta, and actually it was an email, and it said that the company's $50 million credit line had been revoked and that all vendors, all suppliers, all contracts were immediately suspended, including mine. Called, couldn't reach anybody. And it was in that moment that I had to figure out what I was really made of because I wasn't going back to where I was, which is the most common thing we like to do when things get difficult. I said that the pathway to a greater destiny often travels through the doorway of difficulty, pain, and disruption. And so there's something divine and amazing that happens when you lose what you thought you needed. You find out what you're really made of. And so I had these professional athlete clients that I was working with somewhat pro bono to get the experience as I was making the transition from law into my own practice and my own sports agency. And I had to get serious and focus, and so I signed the highest paid defensive end in the NFL as my first client. He had just signed a $62 million 7-year deal. Let me tell you something, a good client is a client that can afford to pay you. And so it grew to be the fastest growing women-owned sports agency in less than a year. I ended up working with lots of NFL and NBA players. My first corporate client was Rolls-Royce, and then Nike, and then Tiffany and Company. And I started doing television as well. It was not only getting my clients booked on ESPN, Fox Sports, Sports Illustrated. I started doing television commentary for ESPN, and my brothers, I have 2 brothers, 8 male cousins. They started a club called BAM, that stood for Boys Against Marshawn. I finally earned their respect when they saw me on SportsCenter talking about LeBron James leaving the Cavaliers, going to Miami. So you know this was a few years ago. And on top of that, my business is doing great. I have a book out called Skirts in the Boardroom, published by the largest business book publisher in the world, Wiley. And it was the first time they had done a business book with a black female under the age of 30. On top of that, I find myself in love. So life is really great. I met a man, very successful, and he had 3 amazing, well, actually he still does, 3 amazing children. And there was something unique and special about hearing the baby girl call me mom, or his son saying, you know what, I don't know what I want to wear today. You're supposed to pick that out for me. It triggered something inside of me that was different than success and being on television and having all of these accomplishments. And so I decided to close my sports agency down. There was something about this other mountain that spoke to me, that caused me to say, you know what, there's something more than just success. And so I'll fast forward to the Monday before the Saturday wedding is scheduled to take place. Now, Monday before the wedding, everything is taken care of. The dress, the venue, the cake, the food, the flowers. Do you know how much money you can spend on flowers? And so I wake up that morning, prepared to pick my fiance up from the airport. He was flying down. We were getting married in Atlanta, and he was coming in town for wedding week. And that Monday morning, I reach for my phone and I get a message, and it's not, well, I got 2 messages. One was from the hotel confirming an appointment that we had that afternoon, and the other was from a woman. And it was from someone that I knew, but as I read this message on a small screen, it delivered something, a big message that would really change my life. And she explained to me that she had been sleeping with my fiance. Didn't think we were going to talk about that at Toyota today, did you? She proceeded to give this long diatribe. And so I picked up the phone and I called my fiance, because I know this can't be true. This is my forever. This is my best friend. This is the person that I am getting ready to walk down the aisle with and say, I do to. This is the person I've closed down my entire company from. I don't have a plan B, because I went all in on plan A. And he says, I knew something like this was going to happen. Don't believe her. And then I hear the flight attendants on the plane saying, sir, you've got to turn off your phone. He goes, sweetie, I got to get off the phone. But don't believe her. I love you. Don't believe her. And it was that word believe that stood out to me magnetically, and also gave me concern but peace at the same time. I felt this thing that I talk about in my book, Believe Bigger, this oak tree rise up inside of me that said, get dressed. And so I did. And then I go to the airport, and as I'm on the way there, I do something that I'm not sure how I was able to drive and do. I call the woman. While I'm driving. And I'm a very trusting person, but I'm a lawyer, and I felt like I was handling a case for one of my clients. And so I asked her some questions, and it was a few things that she said when she could describe the inside of the house that I picked out that I had never actually yet moved into, and described a bed that I haven't yet even got into yet, that helped me to know that this was actually true. And so I get to the airport, and I go to baggage claim, and I hang out in the cut. Some of you know what the cut is, right? So I'm hanging back at baggage claim. I want to see him without him seeing me at this moment. And I believe we have our eyes of reality where we see what's visible. And then we have our eyes where we can step into the unseen realm and see what will tell us something that is true, that we don't need validation from anybody else. And so I saw a countenance, I saw something about him that I had never seen or experienced before. And I realized it was true before he said a word. And thank God that we were at Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport where there was Homeland Security. Because all of a sudden, as I did approach and we sat down and he denied it, and I recognized, every time he denied it, I recognized the forks and knives and how sharp they really were. And I started thinking about the movies and the TV shows that I had seen. But then this oak tree stood back up inside of me and said, "It's time for you to go." And so I'll let you read the details of that encounter. But as he left, and as this week progressed on, I realized that there was a new journey ahead. Number one, how am I going to pay my bills? Now I've got an additional $40,000 in unpaid aspects of the wedding that are supposed to be taken care of. I don't have any clients because I have transitioned all of my professional athlete clients to other representation because I'm moving to become a bonus mom. I let all of this success, all of this status in a very successful company go for love, and now I feel like a fool. I feel stupid, and that I'm smarter than this. I'm smarter than this. I've been trained to know better than this. I'm a good judge of character. How does something like this happen to a girl like me that everybody looks to? And then a few days later, ESPN calls and wants me to come on television talk about Tiger Woods cheating on his wife. And I did it. We as women, we know how to suit up. We know how to put on the mask, do what we need to do. But it was through that season that I learned that difficulties come to take us off the mountains, to move us actually into something greater. When I say that it takes audacity to dare to believe bigger, I'm not just talking about more houses, more cars. It's really about learning who you are at the core of who you are. And sometimes that doesn't happen until everything that you thought you needed and everything that you thought and who you thought you loved is gone. You see, it's one thing to fall. It's another thing when the person who was supposed to catch you is the very person who drops you. But it was in that moment that I said, you know what? I know that my life is not my own, that I'm here for something greater, and I'm going to figure out what the message is inside of this mess. I know that my life matters, and I know that this is way too dramatic just to be a coincidence, that there's an awakening, that maybe a higher calling is calling to me. It takes audacity to believe that when you're dealing with depression. It takes audacity to believe that you're going to be able to change your lives when the mortgage company doesn't care that you're on a spiritual journey with God to find yourself. It takes audacity to believe bigger even than what you've been, because I tried to go back into the sports field, and what was easy before was now struggling. The clients weren't coming as easily, and I had to realize maybe I'm trying to go back through a door that is closed. And oftentimes the difficulty, the disruptions, when things are not going right, maybe it's because we're going back through a door that's expired. And we're supposed to focus forward because there's a place that we're designed to get to if we'll push forward through it. So there's more to these stages of life. We talked about discovery, where we asked the question, who am I supposed to be? In talent, we asked the question, who did I decide to be? Now, who we decided to be may have nothing to do with who we were born to be. In the middle, we'll end up in this place called the gap. The gap is like this place of obscurity and transition. It's like you're in between your Egypt and your promised land. You're not quite where you were, but you know you're not quite where you're going, and you're in this place that can seem really dark and like a wilderness, where you're unclear about what your next step and who you are and what's going on. And all kinds of things start happening. the goal of what happens when we end up in this middle space is that we shift into a new season. But I want you to keep this with you. Every life shift begins with a mind shift. Every life shift begins with a mind shift. And sometimes we can't step into the impossible, we can't unleash the incredible because our mind is stuck on where it used to be as opposed to shifting into a new gear of where we're designed to be. And the way you know you're in a shift, we ask the question is, what is happening to me? You take this word shift, you cover up the F. When stuff starts happening all around you and you think that you're under attack, I want to challenge you to believe that actually you're under and in a place and season of alignment. You see, we're taught so much about retirement. We think that these titles and these things that we accomplish, these mountains that we climb, we think this is all there is. But we're not called to retirement, we're called for reinvention, and this is what visionaries know. And so what I realize is that I experienced this, what I call now a split rock moment. And that disruption comes in to break us up with who we've been, to take us into who we were actually born to be. Because it's trying to get you out of where you were and probably what you've been asking and praying for. If you've been asking for more clients and more growth and more increase and more influence and more income, if you've been asking for that, has anyone been asking for that? If you've been asking for that, then you're asking to be taken out of your comfort zone. If you're asking to serve more people, to change more lives, to have more impact, you're asking for disruption. You're asking for it because it's the only way. Exiting your comfort zone is the only way to enter into this place waiting for you in the future, which is your glory zone. And you can't get there with the old rules that drove you to where you've been. It won't take you into another dimension. This place over here in the comfort zone is like operating in the Earth's atmosphere, but the glory zone is like operating in outer space where gravity doesn't play by the same set of rules. And so you're going to have to rewrite the rules. You're going to also have to break up with the mountains. And you're going to have to go through some things in the gap. This is where you're also going to meet new mentors. You're going to get new ideas. This is where the lightning bolt moments are going to come in, and they're going to be invitations for you to step into what seems impossible. But remember, the impossible is literally just a muscle-building invitation for you to do what's never been seen, but that which is waiting for you to do. You're going to go through this gap, and if you make bigger decisions, you'll enter into this shift. And the shift is what moves us forward as opposed to going in circles. Most people who go in circles is because they're recycling what's already been done. They're trying to play with success and make successful things that have been successful in the past more successful as opposed to elevating, believing bigger in a thing called significance. It's a higher frequency level of thinking. It takes us into stage 4 called the gifts. And gifts are all about your actual true design. In talent, we ask the question, who did I decide to be? In gifts, we ask the question, who was I born to be? How was I really designed? We know that how you're designed determines how you drive, where you drive, how well you get there. It's all about your inner design. And so your gifts contain more than your super skills. You can be anything that you have decided to be. Anything that you water grows. So everything that you've watered, it doesn't mean that it's bad. You might have these super skills, but what I want to challenge you to do is to step into your superpowers. I believe we all have superpowers. Yours could be writing, it could be strategy, it could be architecture, it could be singing, it could be whatever it is, but there's one universal superpower that we all have, and that is our voice. When I was a young girl also, I'm legally blind in my left eye. And I was told that it would be impossible for me to be a baton twirler because I was legally blind in my left eye. Can you just show me one of them? That one, yep. Yes. There you go. Let's hear it for Daniel. And so I was sitting at the eye doctor, and the doctor explained to me that it would be impossible, he actually explained to my mom, that it would be impossible for me to be a baton twirler because of my hand-eye coordination would be too far off. I can't see on my left side. It would be dangerous. If I got hit in the eye, I would have no vision. I wouldn't be able to drive. I wouldn't have a normal functioning life. And so I was told that I couldn't do this. My mom said, but here's the thing, she's already doing it. She's competing. And I noticed when she would put me in classes that I would pick this up quicker than other people. I know the cameramen are waiting for something unique to happen. Do y'all want me to at least try and throw it up one time? Okay. All right, okay. That's all you're getting. And so they told me that this would be impossible for me to do, but it's amazing that I was already doing it. What if we didn't wait on what someone told us that we could do, or them giving us permission to do what we were already built to do? Now, I had to develop it, and all of us have gifts. We still have to invest in it. We still have to develop them. I'll fast forward to 10 years after that. I'm getting ready to go compete at Miss America as Miss District of Columbia, representing the district. Little did I know that when I got there, that I'd be competing 10 days after 9/11, representing our nation's capital. I drove by the Pentagon almost every single day living in DC. And as I was there, a lot of people don't know that I was in a wheelchair right before I went, because I had practiced so hard, I was training so hard with my coach in gymnastics and twirling, and I was twirling 3. I was a competitive baton twirler. I was an international 2 baton champion. And I was in a wheelchair because I had hurt my body, and so the doctors told me you can't do any more physical activity. And so for 2 weeks, the week before, and then we were there actually at the Miss America competition for 2 weeks, I couldn't walk, I couldn't practice, I couldn't keep training, I couldn't go through the routine. The only thing that I could do, I would have, y'all remember Walkmans, where there was actually a tape? I would sit in silence and I would listen to the music and I would play it over and over and over and over again. And oftentimes we've got to be able to actually envision who it is that we want to be, who it is that, and how we want to show up. And that year at Miss America, I actually won the talent competition, not being able to really prepare, simply by power of vision. And so we can operate in our gifts, we can operate in our superpowers. Daniel, I'm going to throw this back to you. Nice. And so each of us has different superpowers. Each of us has different things that we can develop that maybe someone else can't do in the same way that we do them. But here's one thing that we have as our universal superpower, and that is our voice. We each have a story. We each have something unique to share. And what I found in kind of coming out of this season of difficulty was that by embracing disruption, it was really an invitation for me to embrace my voice. And that's the challenge that I have for you today as well. And what is your voice really about? It's about what you've learned in climbing the mountains to teach other people how to do the same thing. It's also about what you've learned in terms of the rules that no longer work, so that you can give the playbook to somebody else about how to break through and shift into a higher place. Because our gifts are not designed just for ourselves. Gifts are designed to be given. And again, I said earlier, we're not here just to climb the mountains. We're here to move mountains. We're here to be able to do something in a much greater way and have greater influence that changes the lives and the trajectory of other people. Business owners that change the world, not just change their pocketbooks, get this, that they're here for a higher purpose. And I discovered this as a process. It was through this journey of trying to dare myself and challenge myself to believe bigger that I was like, well, what do I do now? I can't go back to sports. And so I ended up noticing that people were picking my brain. And they were asking me about branding and how did I get athletes on television and how did I get on television. And CNN would always say she's mastered the art of personal branding. So I decided, instead of allowing my brain to be picked, I just have a seminar. That first seminar started with 35 people. I had been courting a company by the name of HP for years, and for 2 years actually. And they finally said yes. And here's what I believe the shift was, is that by learning to speak as a visionary, not about what you want, but about the impact you want to have. And this is a skill that I believe causes us as business owners, as visionaries, to invite other people into the vision of what we see is available in the future. And that creates buy-in. And so here I am. They didn't know what I was going through. They didn't know that I needed this yes. Have you ever needed a yes? Where you've heard so many no's and you're not even sure how you're going to make it. And so I heard no, 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 no. And then on August 13th, 2010, they actually said yes. I put a contract down at the W Hotel. I decided to have this seminar. I didn't get as many people as I thought, but I had 35 people who showed up, and I charged $1,497 for each person to attend. I did it because I saw some other guys do it, and I said, or I should say future me said, why not you? And when HP said yes, it was like I had someone who was invested in me. And we need that as business owners. We need to have sponsors. We need to have advocates, people who believe in us. And that event with 35 people grew the next year, where it wasn't just HP, it was Office Depot, Ernst & Young, Delta Airlines, and Pitney Bowes and Ernst & Young that were partners with me in this event. And then the next year it grew even further. And then it became an event that generated 7 figures in the 3 days that we would have it. And the company has grown to become the largest coaching company for women of faith in the country. Going from stuck to 7 figures, for me, wasn't about trying to be more successful the way that I had done it. It was about becoming more a listener of how can I help people accomplish their goals and their dreams? And how can I do it in a way that is unique to me? Nobody can do you and make it do what you can make it do. And for me, that was also realizing that what helped me step into a higher dimension was having a higher sense of faith. And as I talked about that unintentionally in my business journey, other people said, you know what, I'm going to believe bigger in myself as well too, and I'm going to believe that I matter bigger than what I've been through and what I've seen. And so I want to share with you, put these over here, I want to share with you 5 quick things that I learned and that I'd love for you to take away. And number 1 is that the way that we get out of the gap, the way that we shift into the next level, the way that we step into the impossible and unleash the incredible, number 1 is to get a bigger vision. Sometimes you've got to close your eyes, you've got to silence yourself, and you've got to rehearse the future that you desire as opposed to rehearsing your fears. What could go wrong, what has gone wrong, and what might go wrong. To silence all of that, to focus on the future. And then number 2 is you have to invest bigger. When I say invest bigger, I mean investing in yourself. You might have great superpowers, and I'm here to tell you that you do. But every superpower, every ability needs investment to go the distance. And so I invested in myself. I had got a coach. Now, I had a coach when I was competing and twirling and becoming a champion in that space. But I had never hired someone to help me in my business because I thought I was just supposed to be able to figure it out by myself, in part because I could help other people figure it out. But here's the thing, I'm going to help you with this. Have you ever felt like sometimes you can help other people in the same areas you struggle to help yourself? Does it not just drive you crazy? Your gifts are designed for others, they're not designed for you. We all have blind spots when it comes to ourselves. So investing in yourself is a way that you become an innovator. Become an investor to become an innovator. You need someone who's been where you've already been, who can take you somewhere where you've never been. And additionally, having companies, major companies, that were willing to invest in me, I believe also helped them to become better innovators. So when to invest bigger oftentimes means to invest smaller, in small business, in women, in minority companies, different ways of thinking. And so I've had this partnership with HP consecutively for 8 years since 2010. And I'm excited about companies that are thinking bigger by going smaller, to tap into untapped areas, to do what might seem like it's against the rules, and to open up to new horizons. So number 2 is to invest bigger. Number 3 is to own your incredible. Because incredible is who you are, it's who you've always been. And if your little me has been too loud, I'm going to speak as your future me until you believe it, that your life matters, your life is not your own, and that you're here for a greater destiny and a greater purpose. But you have to own it. And today's a good day to start. Own your brand. Own what it is that you stand for, but make sure that brand is rooted in core values of significance and not just success. Own your expertise. What is it that you know that others don't? And it's okay to know that you know something that others don't. I believe that we are experts in personal transformation. I don't believe in leadership development anymore. Our company does what we call catalyst development trainings all around the world. I don't believe in PowerPoints anymore for me and for our company because I believe in igniting people from the inside out. But own your expertise, whatever that is, whether it's in personal transformation, product creation. Own your expertise and be able to articulate it. And lastly, own your uniqueness. Know what's your differentiator. And don't shy from it. That would be the equivalent of reaching for a wand to play what is safe. Don't talk that corporate talk. Talk like a visionary. Speak what it is that you seek until you see what you said. And as you speak what you seek, you're going to invite other companies that are looking for visionaries also, because that's what Toyota is all about. They're here to say the challenge, the impossible. I love the new theme because I think it also speaks to the idea of owning your own incredible. Number 4 is to connect bigger. Make greater relationships, but don't just look at size. Look at values, look at vision, align with people who are going where it is that you want to go, and align with companies that are going where you want to thrive as well. And then lastly is to start before you're ready. Let me tell you something. You're never going to be ready. And that's okay. Little me wants you to get ready, to get ready, to get ready, to get ready. To have this meeting after this meeting after that meeting. But what if you challenged your team members and challenged those around you to just throw out ideas without repercussion or being looked down upon? What if we all adopted a new mentality that here's what we do. We start before we're ready because we find out who we are when we let go of the rules. And in doing these 5 things, I recognize that business really isn't about the business. It's about the impact that we have, the lives that we change. As I close out, I just want to leave this closing story with you. I was leading a seminar. It's called Launch Your Dreams, actually. It was for entrepreneurs. And most of the people that we serve on our consumer side are entrepreneurial women who are looking to scale and grow their business, so they're aspiring, emerging, or established. And we had a seminar on how to start your business, start your dream, and scale it up to 7 figures. And there's about 250 people who came to this. We were doing a tour around the country, 250 who came to this one event. And as the room cleared out, there was a woman in the back who just waited until everyone had cleared out. And she came up with tears in her eyes. She had on this gold blazer on with the black camisole underneath. And she said, "Marshawn, you changed my life today." I thought, wow. Okay, and she had tears and she couldn't really talk. She said, "You just changed my life." So what I felt led to do in that moment was to hug her, and I said a prayer with her. And then she was gone, and 6 months later I saw her again. And she said, and she introduced herself. She looked familiar, and then as she introduced herself, I remembered exactly who she was, and I remembered exactly what she was wearing. And she said, "Marshawn, when I told you that you changed my life that day, what I didn't tell you is that morning I had decided to take my life. I was trying to start my business. It wasn't going well. I'd been through a lot as a child. I'd been through molestation, and this is an adult woman." And she said, "I just couldn't take it anymore, and I couldn't figure out my path forward." And when you talk to me about destiny and purpose, when you said that maybe what happened to me really happened for me because of something that was in me that was trying to come through me, when you talk to me about split rock moments and embracing disruption, that maybe my mess was a message, that I was here to have a greater impact, I actually believed it. And so when I said you changed my life, what I meant is that you saved my life. And I was not talking about anything other than business, branding, marketing, and sales, but I do so from a place of my values. And when you show up in business with your values, we have no idea how we are not only going to change lives, but save lives and make lives better. And on the other side of a bigger belief system, yes, is more money. Yes, we're going to help and impact more people. But I didn't get left behind in my heart space either. I was able to meet a man who became my purpose partner, and he put a ring on it. He's really here. Would you like to wave, dear? There you go. Taken. And so my point is that On the other side of a bigger belief system is everything that you've been waiting for and everything that we've been waiting for from you as well. So I want to challenge you to believe bigger, to invest bigger, to own your incredible, to connect bigger, and to start before you're ready. Because the world needs something that only you have. Little me will tell you that's impossible, but future me is telling you right now to challenge the impossible. I want you to start where you are, to use what you have, knowing that what you have is already more than enough. Take care. God bless you.